Greetings, Ian from RTO here. Hope you're all well. Welcome to Thursday, and it's Battle of the Debuts Day, and we've got a really good one here for you today. All the two bands featured today are both bands feature people that had been in other bands and notable bands as well. So we are looking at Blue Murder and Badlands, and there's actually a sort of a connection between both bands. So as usual, we'll always look at the band that released their album first, and in this case it was Blue Murder. Now, Blue Murder were formed by vocalist John Sykes in 1987 after he'd been dismissed from Whitesnake. Now, he decided he was going to do something. Initially, he thought about having Ray Gillan and Cozy Powell, but that fell through, and we ended up with Tony Franklin, who's done lots of session work and played with some notable people as well. One of them being The Firm, and drummer Carmine Appice, who's doesn't need much introduction. Vanilla Fudge played with everybody, I think, in some stage. Frank Zappa, you name it, he's played with it. So they got together and formed Blue Murder. They only recorded this lineup, only recorded the one album, and it had a big impact on everybody at the time. So, the debut album is self-titled, Blue Murder. It was released on the 24th of April 1989 by Geffen Records, and it was produced by Bob Rock. So it's John Sykes on guitars and vocals, Tony Franklin on bass and backing vocals, Carmine Appice on drums and backing vocals. Additional musicians here, we've got Nick Green on the keyboards. John Webster did some additional keyboard and programming. Additional backing vocals were supplied by Mark LaFrance and David Steele. Not the David Steele of the Liberal Democrats, of course. Okay, then the first track on here is a great opening track. It's called Riot. I love that opening. You get that little keyboard piece. Then you get the drums coming in, and that distinctive Tony Franklin bass. In comes John. Great opening track. Second track is Sex Child. Again, great start. Great riffs in this. Great vocal from John. Solid track. Third track, Valley of the Kings. I love this. It's my favourite track by Blue Murder. It's Carmine's drumming that's brilliant on this. It's got that eerie, atmospheric track. Great riffs. It's a superb song. Actually co-wrote by Mr. Tony Martin. Again, a vocalist that's been around, done the thing. So it's a great track, and you can tell Tony Martin was involved in this because it could have ended up as a Black Sabbath song. Track 4, Jelly Roll. Love this. It's a little bit, it's not so rocky, it's an acoustic-y sort of number, but what I like about it is that riff that comes in, that really is heavy. It's a great track. Track 5 is the title track, Blue Murder. Again, we've got some great drumming here from Carmine. The riffs on here are brilliant as well, and it's a great vocal from Mr. Sykes, one of the best on the album. Outer Love. Now, this is quite a sort of mediocre love track, but it has got a superb solo from John, and that's what really makes it from mediocre to a good track. It's the solo. Then we get Billy, probably the weakest track on the album, but it doesn't make it a bad track. It's just not as strong as the rest of the tracks. Then we get a track called, I think it's pronounced Ptolemy. Love this track because it's got a great Tony Franklin bass line on it. Typical John Sykes riffs and licks. Great drumming, good track. Black Hearted Woman. Now I think this is a bit of a Children of the Night Whitesnake riff. It's a great track, but I don't know if this was something that John put forward to Whitesnake and got rejected, but it's got that feel to that sort of Whitesnake sound. That's the last track on the album. What do I find about this album? I love it. I brought this when it came out. I hadn't heard it, just went and brought it, knowing that it was John Sykes, Tony Franklin and Carmine, our piece. You knew you were going to get a good album, and I was never disappointed with this one. Some terrific tracks on here. It's just a shame they never made any more, because if they'd have made any more, I think this would have been a big band. But they didn't. So, what did the old critics think of this one? Lots of positives for the album. Raw's Paul Suter gave Blue Murder a 10 out of 10, rating it, and called it one of the finest albums of an age. And he gave special praise to Bob Rock on this one, saying that his production was excellent and the band's musicianship and guitar playing had elevated him to the same level as Ritchie Blackmore and Jimmy Page. Rock Hard's review similarly voiced, with Riot, Valley and the Kings and Blue Murder being singled out as particular highlights. The record was also described as a must-have for rock fans. Warren J. Rhodes, writing for the Californian Aggie, called the album excellent, while Nigel Jeffries of Kerrang, and Kerrang at the time with the thing, hailed it as a masterpiece, giving it a perfect score. Spin's John Young, meanwhile, gave the record a scathing review, calling it a disaster. The band's aimless. Oh dear. This guy doesn't know good music if it comes and slapped him in the face, does he? So let's have a look at the stars. Now, AllMusic gave it a 4 and a little bit. There's a little bit of the star covered up, so I'd say more 4.5 stars. Collector's Guide to Heavy Metal gave it a 7 out of 10. Hi-Fi News and Record Review, I've never heard this one, gave it an A2, whatever that means. Kerrang gave it a full 5 stars out of 5 stars. Raw gave it a 10 out of 10. Record Collector gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. And Rock Hard 9 out of 10. Chart-wise, got to number 45 in the UK. And in the US Billboard got to number 69. So that's not too bad, considering what other music was around at the time. It's not a dynamite album, but the fans did like it, I can assure you. The people I was hanging about with in '89 all loved this album. We all loved it. So let's have a look at the nuts and bolts of this one. Song quality. When you get people like Tony Franklin, John Sykes and Carmine Appice writing songs together, you're going to get some dynamite tracks, and you have. And I'm going to give that a 5 out of 5. Production. Bob Rock's production on this is fantastic. Now, when you think about what was the music of the 80s it was all that horrible tinny drums, all that horrible synthesizer sound. None of that on this album, thank you very much. It's just good old-fashioned rock. And I'm going to give it a 5 out of 5. Reception. Now, the critics really, apart from that Wally John Young, everyone else loved it. And even though it only got to number 45 in the UK charts, I know there's a lot of people out there that still love this album to this day. So I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. Now, cover design. There's not a picture of the band on this, but Blue Murder is in gold. on a bluey background. It stands out. I remember walking into the record shop and you could see that from as you walked in the door. So I'm going to give it a 5 out of 5. So far, Blue Murder by Blue Murder gives us a grand total of 19 out of 20. I can't remember if we've had a 19 out of 20. We've never had a 20 out of 20 yet. I'm sure one day we will, but great total. So, in America, a certain former guitarist of Ozzy Osbourne, Jake E. Lee, decided to form a band, and he called it Badlands, and he recruited former Sabbath members Ray Gillen, who could have been in Blue Murder. Sadly, Ray died of AIDS-related diagnosis in I think, what year was it? Just trying to think what year it was. Come on, Ian. Somewhere in the 90s. Such a shame. He was a great singer. He sang on the Phenomena album as well. Eric Singer on drums, who went on to he's drummed with Gary Moore and most famously Kiss, and Surgical Steel bass player Greg Chason. So Badlands, self-titled debut album, was released in June '89, so a few months after Blue Murder. Yes, died in the end of 1993, did Ray Gillen. Just come to me. I remember where I was as well. So, yes. So, on here we've got Jake E. Lee on guitars and mandolin, sitar and keyboards, Greg Chason on the bass, Eric Singer on drums, Ray Gillen on the vocals. Additional musicians on here we have got Tasso Carras on tambourine and maracas, Bob Kinkle on keyboards, programming and production was Paul O'Neill, mixed by James A. Ball. First track on this one is High Wire. Again, this was an album I just went and brought because it featured J.E. Lee and Eric Singer, and I thought, oh, this will be good. And you get that opening riff from Jake. Absolutely, holy moly. I thought, wow, this is good. And then you got Ray Gillen, who was a great singer. Absolutely great. What a great track to open up the album with. Dreams in the Dark. Fantastic vocal from Ray Gillen. The great guitar work from Jake. Solid track. Jade's song. It's very short, little bit of guitars. Twiddles from Jake E. Lee. Winter's Cool. Strong riffs on here. Great drumming from Eric Singer. As again, you've got a really strong vocal from Ray. Nothing wrong with that one. Dancing on the Edge. I love the start of this. It's got this real chunky guitar sound with riffs, licks. Great hard rocker. Then we got my favourite track on this album, Streets, Cry Freedom. Great riffs again. Ray Gillen's best vocal on this album, and it's just sadly he died because he would have been a great. He'd have never been out of work, put it that way. And Jake E. Lee's guitar work on that is superb. Hard Driver. Eric's drumming on this is brilliant. It's a hard rocker, some great riffs. Superb track. Rumblin Train. Love the riff on this. It's a bluesy sort of riff. Again, it's just great. Devil Stomps. Great riffs. These four guys really play well together. They're taking from what they learned with other people, and they come up with a great one there. Seasons. Certainly another great, outstanding vocal from Ray. Solid rock track as well. The bass line on this from Greg, it's amazing. It's really deep and dirty. Ball and Chain, it's the weakest track on here. It only appeared on the CD and cassette, and not on the album. I mean, I got the CD, so I've got it. Okay, what do I think of this album? This is a killer album again on here. I love every track on this album. There's some great playing on here. Considering when it come out, again, there's none of that 80s nonsense production on this. Proper raunchy, proper rock. But what do the critics think? Kirk Blow's review of the British music paper Music Week named the LP as accomplished and a worthy debut and praised its diversity. Billboard called this record a collection of well-crafted tunes that should jump out at the radio and a great live sound. Yeah, I think they made 3 or 4 albums. We will be covering them at some stage, but they went down well. So AllMusic gave it a 4 stars. Collector's Guide to Heavy Metal 10 out of 10, and Rock Hard 9 out of 10. How did it do in the charts? Well, it got to number 39 in the UK, so a little bit higher than Blue Murder, and number 57 in the Billboard charts. So again, had a bit more success. Song quality then, nuts and bolts time. Again, the songs on this are brilliant. I love it. You know, there's not a bad song on this, so I'm going to give it a 5 out of 5. Production, well produced album again. None of that 80s nonsense. It's just good old-fashioned rock. Reception, just like Blue Murder, it got some good reviews as well as fans, because I know again it's another album we all liked. So I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. Cover design. I could have used a better photo, to be quite honest. It's a little bit dark and dingy. It doesn't stand out as much as the Blue Murder, so I'm going to give cover design a 4 out of 5. So for Badlands by Badlands gives us a total of 18 out of 20. So technically, Blue Murder have won. And the 1 point is all about the cover at the end of the day. Musically, both albums are fantastic, and I can't pick it today. I really can't. Forget the covers for a moment. Song quality both scored 5, production 5, and reception 4. That's what it's all about. I can't pick this one, so I'm going to hand this one over to you today, because I can't, because I love these both albums, look both the same, and they're albums I play and play and play. They've always been played. So tough one today, guys. So next week we've got one more of the new normal sort of Battle of the Debuts, and then for the rest of December I'm going to do something that someone's sort of asked for. We're going to do Battle of the Debuts, subtitle I've Gone Solo, because someone asked about putting UFO up against Michael Schenker, and I thought that was a really good idea. So that's what we'll be doing in a few weeks' time. I'll be back later with the final album artwork show before we put it to bed for a little while. And we've got a stinkers that's been put together by myself and Mastermind Dave. So join me for that. I know you like some of the covers that we come up with. So bye for now.